What does it really mean to be special? That's my question today. Spider-Man. After watching 3 Spider-Man movies in 3 days, I realized something. Well, I realized Spider-Man was making me question something I didn't expect to question, which is, what does it really mean to be special? Like, really, what does it really mean to be special? Is it something, or is it just a story in our heads? It was my first Spider-Man movie ever, Brand New Day. I got really excited. I had a great time with Brand New Day. And then I went to watch these 2 other movies. I watched the first one in Tom Holland's saga, Homecoming 2017, and then I went to Andrew Garfield's saga and I watched The Amazing Spider-Man 2012. I noticed that with the 3 of them, after watching the movies, I got this sort of hangover feeling. Like when you have a great experience and then you go really high and then you fall really low, like when you go on a trip, on an amazing adventure, and you come back home, talking about homecoming, you go back home and you see your life like, this is kind of boring or dull or whatever. The first time I recognized this feeling was, I think, when I watched The Adventures of Tintin in 2011, I think, that I went out of the theater feeling, well, my life is purposeless. After watching these purposeful stories, these superhero narratives, these mission-oriented lives, these courageous characters, these amazing, very important, saving the world kind of stories, I go back to my life and my life feels like, I should have a mission, like Lightyear. Probably Lightyear was my last superhero movie, if that's a superhero movie. And it's interesting that in Lightyear, he's like this superhero that has no mission, and he needs a mission because this is my identity. I'm a superhero. And without a mission, who am I? And that's a very important question in Spider-Man. Who am I? In the ending of The Adventures of Spider-Man 2012, Andrew Garfield goes back to school, and this drama or literature teacher is precisely talking about there's not 10 stories, but one in all of narrative. There's only one essential story, which is, who am I? And that's something that is in a way resolved or integrated in the ending of Brand New Day, when Jean, the crazy telepath played by Sadie Sink, asks Peter, you need to be honest with yourself. Are you Peter Parker or are you Spider-Man? And he takes a moment and he says, I'm both. So something about these 2 personalities get integrated. And I think that's a very important theme in Spider-Man that probably most likely has to do with why is, Brand New Day doing so well, really well in the world right now, and why Spider-Man is actually a character that connects so much with people. And that has to do with what the very creators of the character, I read something about Stan Lee, one of the creators, talking about being personally interested in having a superhero being a very common, ordinary guy, like a young neighbor from Queens with ordinary problems, with daily life challenges such as paying the rent and relating to girls and with family. And that's probably one of the reasons why Spider-Man connects so much with people. After watching The Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield, I went to see another Andrew Garfield movie, which is a very weird movie, 2020 movie called Mainstream, where he plays this crazy guy that gets into a project with Maya Hawke. They create this YouTube channel and he becomes this famous influencer who tries to spread a word about people being really addicted to cell phones and social media and so on. And he's this kind of crazy shepherd trying to convince people to get out of social media. He talks about all of us being special, so none of us is actually special. So his name, people know him by the name of No One Special. He's no one special. So it was very interesting to see this movie where he plays this guy, no one special, after watching the same actor in this superhero story where he's very special, and it's all about being special, and the relationship of him being special with him not being special. Homecoming, the first one with Tom Holland, the movie is all about Peter trying to prove himself and prove this team that he's worth being part of the superheroes team. And when he finally makes it, they prepare this press conference for him at the end of the movie, and he says, no, I don't feel like doing that. And I think that has to do with Peter Parker being this common guy that wants to keep it simple, like being this neighbor in Queens and so on. Again, that's probably something that really connects with people. That's what felt more like compelling or moving or touching for me in Brand New Day. Of course, I got excited with the action and Hulk and the whole thing, especially because it was my first Spider-Man movie. So I got really excited about that. But I think where they are making a point is in how the conflict is actually resolved. And that's something interesting to ask or to question or to reflect on, especially in superhero movies where good and evil are so polarized. It's very interesting in this kind of narratives to question or to investigate where does evil come from and how is conflict in the narrative actually resolved. In Brand New Day, it's all about this girl that has telepathic powers and creates this crazy mess in New York. And in the end, the way in which Peter solves the problem is not with physical force, but with empathy. He lets her get into his mind, into this memory where he was talking with Aunt May. And so Jean comes to realize that Peter is actually just like her, this special person with special powers, feeling lonely, isolated in the world because they are different. That's where I want to go into this question of what does it really mean to be special. When they are still fighting, Jean says something like her only crime, talking about her sister Sarah, because in the end, Jean is not a bad girl, but just a hurt person trying to find her missing sister, which also had telepathic powers, and these people kidnapped her to develop this research on her with her. Finally, Sarah ends up dying, so Jean is feeling revengeful, very, very angry. She's very pissed, and she says something along the lines of her only crime was that she was special, just like you, just like me. People like us, like you, Peter, and me. We don't have family, we don't have friends. That's all gone. We've lost all of it. And he says, "You're not a killer, Jean." And she answers, "You have no idea what I am." What I am. The question of identity. Who am I? When they start connecting, Peter says, "I know that losing her, your sister Sarah, felt that you lost everything. But just because we've lost someone, it doesn't mean we have to do this alone. We can't. It doesn't work. I've tried, but it doesn't actually work." And when Jean gets into Peter's memory with Aunt May, she sits in his bed and has the same dialogue with Aunt May that he had. And Aunt May, Marisa Tomei, says, "We love you not because you're special. We love you because you are you." So in the end, being special is not so important. It's probably just the story you used to understand why you were isolated, lonely, alone. This is a feeling that I can relate to very easily, this feeling that I'm special, so I'm lonely, no one understands me, no one really listens to me. That's something I can really connect to because of my personal story, because of my psychic structure or whatever. So I was talking with this friend and she said something like, no, not something like, she said these precise words: "Hada, you're not special, you are specific. you are not special, you are specific. Because when we think of ourselves as special, we use that story meaning an idea. I'm special, it's an idea. We use that idea, that story, to keep isolated, protected in our island. As I'm special, I cannot really connect with people. But if we change the world just a little bit, from special to specific, I'm not special, I'm specific, then we realize we are actually all of us, no one's special, like Andrew Garfield says in Mainstream, the movie. No one's special, we are all specific, we are all singular. So then you realize that you can actually connect with others. And that's something that I really saw when I connected Spider-Man with a short story by Argentinian writer Liliana Bodoc. When I was watching this scene in Brand New Day where they connect in the end and Peter lets Jean enter his mind, his memory, I remember this short story by Liliana Bodoc. I don't know if it's translated, but it would translate something like Friends Through Wind. Friends Through Wind. It's about this girl that loses her father, leaves, abandons her and her mother when she's very young. So the way with which she processed that pain, that traumatic pain of being abandoned by her father, is by using the metaphor of the wind coming into their home and taking her father away. Sometimes, she says, a wind gets into your life and creates this chaos and takes things away. Sometime after that, she and her mother could organize their life again. But then her mother starts dating this guy who has a young boy, a son, who is kind of the same age as she is, 2 kids, and they start coming over their house. So she, the main character, starts feeling threatened by this little boy. She's scared about the boy taking over her room, for example, her bed. So she antagonizes with him. That's something we usually do with another one comes into our little property, our little world, with our own order of things, our little fiction. When someone else comes into our home, we feel threatened. That's a reaction we have as humans. So she feels threatened, so she antagonizes, sees him as an enemy who can take over her room and her bed, and in the end they start talking, and he tells the story of his own mother dying, passing years ago. When he tells her the story of his mother dying, he uses the same metaphor of the wind taking her away. So when she listens to his story, she understands that it's probably the same wind that came into his life and took his mother away, the same wind that took her father away. So it's not about the wind, but about both of them using the same metaphor to process a traumatic event of losing. It's all about loss, as Peter and Jean. So they come together when they realize antagonism is transcended. He no longer feels as an enemy when she realizes that he used the same language, the same poetic language, the same metaphor to process loss, traumatic loss. So when I remember that short story, that brought light to Peter Parker and Jean's story of how they come together in the ending of Brand New Day. Something clicked in me. I understood that this idea of being special, the question with which I started the video, what does it really mean to be special? It's actually a metaphor. The idea of I'm special, we are special, it's actually a metaphor. And that's what Aunt May says. We don't love you because you're special, we love you because you are you. So maybe superheroes narratives turn this universal and common experience of feeling special, meaning isolated and lonely, into an extreme metaphor Just as Kafka in the Metamorphosis turns the common experience of feeling like a cockroach into the story of a man that literally wakes up transformed into a cockroach. I mean, we can read the Metamorphosis in this way. Gregorio Samsa feels like a cockroach, and the story turns that feeling into a literal experience. He now is a cockroach. So we are special as a story, we are special as an idea is probably not the deepest truth for Peter and Jean, but just the language they found to talk about a way more simpler and universal experience, the experience of loss, which is actually what connects them. They are not connected by the story of being special. That's the surface, that's probably what creates the context for them to identify with each other, but in the end, deep down, it's not about being special, but about being human. And loss probably being one of the most common and essential experiences of being human. That's my point today. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Let me know if you watched Brand New Day. What did you think? How did it go for you? Leave a comment, leave your questions, subscribe, share, and see you in the next one.